I24 News Morning Edition on this November 25th. And the next item is one of major importance to the entire world, not just to women. 1 in 3 women around the world has been or will be subjected to some form of sexual, physical, or psychological violence in her lifetime. That is a statistic, mostly by an intimate partner. These startling statistics were released by the UN ahead of the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, commemorated today. Despite countless organizations and laws dedicated to fighting this grave violation of the basic human right for safety and security, little hope seems to lie ahead. Let's first take a look at Mandy Kogosowski's report about the global plight of women in the throes of violence and pick up from there.
Female students at the University of Delhi are joining forces as part of a campaign called Break the Cage, which opposes the school's 7 p.m. mandatory curfew for women. Supposedly designed to keep women safe in a city notorious for sexual violence, this curfew, in fact, only keeps them locked indoors at night, while their male counterparts are free to stay out late and enjoy the city.
If you really want to make a city safe for a woman, if you really want, you have to make the city accessible to her. You have to have more women out on the streets. So that is the solution, not locking people inside.
And Delhi is just one example. A UN report published ahead of the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women reveals that 35% of women globally have experienced some form of physical or sexual abuse. In some areas of the world, this percentage is in the 90s. Approximately 133 million girls and women have been subjected to female genital mutilation. Over 700 million women were forced into marriage before the age of 18. 1/3 of them before the age of 15.
My father forced me to marry that man. Then I felt that I was in a difficult situation. Later, I decided to burn myself to die. However, neighbors rushed in and rescued me by putting out of the flames on the skin.
Rape, sexual assault, and other forms of violence are rampant in the refugee camps sprouting across Europe and the Middle East, putting an increasing number of women and young girls in harm's way. The rise of global terrorism has added to the number of sex slaves, currently estimated at a known 20 million.
We spent 3 months in a house of the 2 masters who purchased me. It was very tough. They tortured us. They wanted to converse us forcibly and told us to pray and read the Quran. And when we refused, we were beaten, chained in the blazing sun, and forced to drink water in which there were dead mice. Sometimes they threatened to use electric shocks to torture us.
Gender-based discrimination and deeply rooted social norms are at the heart of violence against women. And while numerous global organizations are dedicated to fighting this horrific phenomenon, sadly, the success rate seems to be quite limited, at best.
I'm joined in studio by a member of the Israeli Parliament, Merav Michaeli, faction chair of the Zionist Union. Good morning to you. With me also political consultant and feminist activist Hannah Beit Halachmi. Pardon me. Yeah. Good morning to you. I want to thank you both for being with us. Speaking of statistics, okay, a bit more numbers. When we look at turning our focus to the situation of women in Israel. According to a report published by the No to Violence NGO, there are roughly 200,000 abused women in the country. Not enough shelters to accommodate all of those who seek help, and we're speaking of Israel because we're sitting in Israel. And according to another report by Vitzo, 16 women were killed by members of their family this past year, and this year is 2015. The so-called honor killings in comparison to 10 the previous year. Almost 5,000 women and girls were treated in hospital due to injuries inflicted by abuse. I'm going to ask you first. It's 2015. Why are we still in this situation?
Because nothing changed, because the government doesn't do anything specific. Just this morning, when I was on my way here, I heard on the radio one of the ministers supporting MK ינון Magal and saying that, you know, it's he doesn't know the girls or the ladies that, you know, and so on.
For a second, just for viewers overseas. Yeah. ינון Magal is a Knesset member, and for that I'm also happy that I have Knesset member Merav Michaeli with me in studio. Yeah. He's a Likud, no, well, not him, sorry. He's a Jewish Home Knesset member. And well, let's just give a headline to our overseas viewers. A female former co-worker accused ינון Magal, two female co-workers, and that's from Haaretz, an Israeli newspaper this morning, accusing Minister ינון Magal of workplace harassment, which is very specific. And this is a person within the Israeli parliament.
With very specific, illustrative description of what he said, and he also admitted it. He apologized. So there is no doubt that he did it, and still MKs are supporting him, male MKs are supporting him. So there is an environment that assists the situation to stay as it is through the years. And I'm also not buying the number of 200,000 battered women, because I think it's much more. We are using this number since I'm an activist, and it's over 20 years. So I'm sure that you know, nobody really checked it, because we cannot check it. We don't know really the numbers. And the situation.
Harassment and violence against women involves also a lot of fear.
If you would be on my you know, hidden listener on my phone, my impression here is from all the phone calls that I'm getting throughout the times, that the situation is worsening. It's not getting better.
It is clear that around the world the situation is worsening. It doesn't take just, and sadly, refugee camps to abuse women. And if we're looking at the situation, let's say specifically, Merav Michaeli, within Israel, I'm going to pose the same question. 2050, why are we still in this situation?
As Hannah said, it's not that nothing changes. It changes, but it doesn't necessarily improve. There are always new ways to abuse women. What doesn't change is patriarchy, is the fact that there is masculine dominancy, the fact that there is overwhelming inequality, that there is oppression of women. That doesn't change. We do find really very creative new ways to do that, to use technology, to use global world in terms of business and anything else. Then there are new ways, but it's still 99%, according to the UN report on women, 99% of the wealth and the property in the world is in the hands of men, and only 1% is in the hands of women. As long as this is the situation, we as women do not have the means to make the difference, to do what it takes to make the government actually do affirmative action to change the situation. It's not enough to have another shelter or not enough, but the whole concept of a shelter to me is like just unbelievable. Why should the women and the children who are being abused be those? Exactly. Why are not the men taken? And by the way, I am much more interested in reconstruction, in shikum.
In rehabilitation.
Rehabilitation. I'm much more interested in rehabilitation, in creating a more healthy society as much as a more equal society. But nothing is done in order to achieve that.
Well, then I'll give you the argument that I'm assuming within a patriarchal society, and in this day and age of so much violence and the word terror being thrown around, well, terror being an existing fact around the world, that people will say that the plight of women should be besides the point. I'm playing devil's advocate right now.
No, by all means.
That this is something that we cannot deal with. But at the end of the day, in situations as such, be it war, strife, what we're seeing in Israel, the wave of violence over the course of the last 2 months, why should the government deal with the plight of women?
It's, and of course, the classical egg and hen. The more women in power, the more dealing with violence against women will have less of any other kind of violence. Because right now, the oppression of women uses men also to be able to create more wars in the world in general, more terror, more national sort of disputes.
Right.
When we'll have more equality for women, there will be much less incentive and much less possibility to go for all the other violences,
and there are a lot
which
of profit from those wars, because most of the businesses which is relying on war are in the hands of men, if not all of them. If you take all the weapon industry, if you take everything concerning, if I could add 2 points.
You can add whatever you want.
One concerning rehabilitation. Yesterday, Minister Gilad Erdan said that he wants to take the man out of the house and so on, the violent man out of the house, and all the women, which are being subject to violence. But the government itself closed Beit Noam, which was the only institution that was really dealing with rehabilitation of men. So they have to decide, what they're doing. They're closing, they are cutting the budget to rehabilitation of men, of violent men, and families which are under violence. In one hand, right. And they're saying, it takes the headline, so it's very nice, it's very good. They're saying that they want to take the men out of the house. So decide, put the budget for it, and bring back all the people that you fired that could deal with rehabilitation of violence men. This is one thing. The other thing is that we need to enforce. There are excellent laws against violence against women. We need to enforce them better. They are not being enforced. And the statistics that came up only last week and was published in Yediot Achronot, I think, said that, most of the policemen, for example, think that sexual harassment is dependent on how women dress, and that's how they treat them when they get into the police station to complain about it. So
sadly, that's not just exclusive to the Middle East. I think one can relate that to men worldwide. We were supposed to speak, and for some technical issues, we don't have with us right now a Parliament member, Aida Tuma Suleiman, of the Joint List representing Hadash. She's also the chairperson of the Committee on Status of Women. I'm talking about Arab-Israeli women, Arab women in Israel, who I think we can safely say, just like they're second-class citizen. When it comes to honor killings, something that is not being eradicated, but we're seeing an uptick on it also.
Yeah, well, that's, it comes and goes sort of in numbers. And this year we have, unfortunately, I'm not saying, no disrespect, of course, but this year we have more Arab women that have been killed by their spouses or family members. Last year we had more women who came from Ethiopia murdered by their spouses. So it's not necessarily a something that has a reason. It can't be just a case that happens. But there's no doubt that it's easier for Israeli authorities to blame the society and the culture of Arab Israelis in what happens there and not take responsibility for what they have to do in order to stop those murders. And it's also clear that the heads of Arab society do not do enough in order to change this culture that allows it at the end.
Yeah,
yes.
That is very patriarchal.
So it unfortunately, once again, it works well for men on both sides together. But I want to add, with your permission, one other thing to the 2015 point and say one other thing. There is a huge backlash. We need to recognize that. Because feminism is successful, because we have changed the rules. And we need to remember, we always need to remember that it's only been 100 years that we are in the game. Right. It's a very short time if you're talking in historical perspective. And there is an overwhelming backlash when men are debating and they're conducting an ongoing battle over their lost privileges, okay? Right. When they insist that it's not sexual harassment or it's consensual or whatever.
This is in the case of ינון Magal, remarks between friends.
Friends, exactly. Right. This is an ongoing battle that they are waging, and I can, relate to they are going through really a deprivatization and ongoing. They're being deprived constantly.
In the way they define themselves in the society. It's a difficulty that we should address in education and so on.
No, I mean it's a wonderful thing that I'm trying not to feel sorry for them.
No,
but going through the change. I think the optimistic point being that it's only been 100 years. Let's hope that it's not going to take more than that.
And we don't need to feel sorry for them, but we do need to recognize it in order to be able to handle it better. That's what I think. I think you need to recognize that that's part of the problem and be able to address it. If we're not able to address it, then it will only escalate. And this is part, I think, of our responsibility as feminists, to be able to look at it and to negotiate, to have a dialogue. It's not a one thing, you know, I don't want to change roles. I don't want to just, you know, make them now oppressed.
No, we want equality.
Exactly. So we need to recognize it and to have a dialogue.
I totally agree. I just want to add one word for 2015, for the 2015 point. There is a legitimate feeling that men could go on and hold guns and have guns and so on in this political situation. And this is also a danger. So I think that it's gonna be problematic this year.
It's gonna be problematic, but we're not gonna stop fighting. Thank you for being with me this morning. When we get back, not just for the men in the audience, soccer, Chelsea, Israel. We'll take a closer look. Stay with us. First the news.